This is the IELTS listening test. You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.
You will hear a man talking to a woman about hiring a car. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hi, I'm Carlton Mackay, and you booked me some flights recently to Australia and some internal ones?
Oh yes, Mr. Mackay. I remember you now, of course.
Well, I find I'm going to need car hire while I'm in Sydney after all. I think you said you could recommend a good value company?
Yes, that's right. Cost-wise cars. They're very good and don't charge lots of extras. They have 3 offices in the Sydney area, including one office right at the airport.
So I'll just book it online?
Yes, you can book online, but you should have their phone number too, just in case.
Of course.
That's 1800 705 639. It's on the website, and you can get a discount if you quote your booking reference from us.
Oh, what's that?
I mean the one you got from me when we booked your flights. I have it here. 743002.
Oh, thanks. I guess I've got it at home, but I'll write it down again in case. A discount is good. So, where exactly is the office? I'll be coming to the domestic terminal from Melbourne.
It's immediately outside the international terminal.
OK. And another thing I want to check is, will they be open when I arrive, or is it just office hours?
Well, they open at 6:45 and close at 6:15 in the evening. So let's see. You're due to land at 6:10. By the time you've collected your bags and so on, which will take a little while, they won't be open. But if you arrange it in advance, they can wait for you. You do have to pay an extra $30 for that, though.
OK. Well, I'm staying near the airport the first night, so I could go back in the morning and save a day's hire?
Yes, that'd be better. That'd save you about $50.
Do you know what kind of cars they have?
Quite a variety, I think. The best value should be under $60 a day with luck. That would be the Echo, I guess.
Sorry?
ECHO. Like when your voice bounces back?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
I suppose I have to book online before I leave?
That's the best way. They won't deduct any charges until you finish with the car, but they do need your credit card number when you book, and of course they'll want to see your driving licence when you collect. How long will you need it?
I'm in Sydney for 7 days. I'll only actually need to use it on 3 or 4 of those days, I hope, but I'll keep it for the whole week. I guess it's going to be a few $100s. Can you suggest anything I can do to keep the cost down?
Oh, you get quite a big discount if you do less than 1,000 kilometres in the week.
Oh, that's good. I don't suppose I will be driving that far, actually.
But, oh yes, the other thing I should mention is the insurance. It's included in the price.
Oh, that is good value then.
Yes, but what you must remember is that it doesn't cover anything except the car, so you must be careful not to leave anything at all in it when you park, because your luggage isn't insured, even if it's out of sight, locked in the boot.
Yeah, well, I think my travel policy will cover that, actually.
Good.
OK, and can I return the car outside office hours? My flight home is very early in the morning. Can I put the keys through the door or something?
There's a secure box just outside the office on the pavement. You just drop the keys in there.
Oh, good.
And one other thing, you should remember to buy petrol before you leave it. If you don't drop the car back with a full tank, you get charged to fill it. I recommend you go to a supermarket before you go out to the airport.
Thanks for the tip.
Not at all. Do call in again if there's anything else I can help with.
I will. Many thanks.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1.
Now turns to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a talk about keeping children safe on the Internet. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16.
Thank you for coming. It's good to see so many of you interested in keeping your children safe on the Internet. What's in store? Well, firstly, I'm going to talk in general about some common sense ideas and rules for young ones using the computer. Then, I'll give you some information on free educational websites. Finally, we'll finish with question time. I'm sure most of you think that the Internet can be a frightening place in which to let your children roam loose. But let me remind you that it can also be a fountain of knowledge and education. The trick is to avoid the former and utilize the latter. There are programs available both in your local electronics supply shop and free to download that will keep your child safe to a certain degree on the World Wide Web. A popular one is Online Family Norris, which bars things like military and social websites. I wouldn't advise you to rely solely on a program to protect your family, though. As good as it is, you cannot abdicate your responsibility as a parent. I'm sure you all know that, or you wouldn't be here. When all is said and done, the best way to keep children safe is to educate them and keep an eye on them. For this reason, you should make sure the computer which your child uses is kept in a communal space, where you can look over their shoulder from time to time. It is paramount that you teach them never to divulge their proper or full name, and to never provide personal information, such as where they live or what their phone number is. Tell them that online friends must remain just that, online, unless they are supervised. It is difficult, I know, to teach children about the dangers of the world when they are so naive, so trusting and innocent. But without going into great detail, you must alert them to the possibility that the people they are chatting with may not be who they say they are. It's also sensible not to give them their own email address until they are old enough to use the internet safely. So, all communication from websites will go through you. When they are old enough to use social sites like Facebook and MySpace, teenagers need to know that whatever postings they put on the web will remain accessible forever. Nothing is ever really deleted there. And embarrassing pictures or remarks may come back to haunt them one day. For instance, when they apply for a job, they could jeopardize their chances, as the employer or human resources staff will look on the web to find out more about their potential employee, and they may be shocked by what they find there. Not the sort of stuff an applicant would want on his or her CV. It can also make them more vulnerable to bullying. Unfortunately, bullying on social sites is another thing to look out for, and I have to tell you, it's on the increase. It's a very difficult issue to deal with, but something that is more easily detected if the computer is kept in a family space. If we can put these negative issues aside, let's not forget that the internet is also a wonderful place for children of all ages. Teenagers may be mostly networking on social sites or completing research that they've been asked to do as part of their homework assignments, but younger children can get assistance with mathematics, spelling and reading on a variety of free and paid-for sites.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20.
A good way for children to learn and have fun at the same time is the website mathtutor.com. They can practice mathematics on this site, no matter what their level, while they compete against other children from all over the world. And here's a fun way for primary school children to learn the spelling words for the week. It can be such a chore for some children. They just type them in and play games to learn them. What's that? The website? Oh, sorry, yes, you'll need to go to spellcity.com for that. The one I'm going to tell you about now is one of the most practical sites that's popular with people of all ages. Children, or parents for that matter, can learn to touch type as they sing along with songs, And there's a variety of funny characters to help you enjoy yourself as you learn. In this day and age, typing is essential. Everyone should be able to type fast and accurately. So, go to beeb.co/typing and try it out. Don't just leave it up to the kids. Here's a site that parents can use to download worksheets to extend their children by giving them further practice. It's called coolresources.com, and I can really recommend it, particularly for middle school students. Now, are there any questions?
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
You will hear a student of landscape architecture discussing a project with his tutor. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
So, let's hear what you're doing for your next project.
I've decided to design a roof garden for a supermarket. I've been looking at some on the web, and I think that a garden on top of a building is the up-and-coming thing.
Okay. So you've done a bit of reading already?
Mm-hmm.
What benefits would there be for the client? Why do you think a supermarket chain would be willing to meet the expense of construction? You do realize that would be the first thing they raise.
Yes, I know. But I'd explain that in spite of the initially high expense, they would save that much in approximately 5 years. Well, I'd have to do sums. Calculate specifically.
Yes. How would the saving come about?
Mainly through lower heating and aircon bills. The extra insulation offered by having a layer of living plants in the soil would make a huge difference.
Okay. But they might feel the expense of maintenance would be an issue. After all, supermarkets don't normally employ gardeners.
What I thought was, if they made it a community garden, rather than a simple low-maintenance green roof.
So there'd be public access?
Oh, yes. Then there'd be a sense of ownership in the local community, and people could take responsibility for it, instead of the supermarket paying a commercial company, and it would really boost their public relations.
That's a good point. And have you been looking into how roof gardens are built nowadays?
I'm still exploring that. But if I take advantage of the latest technologies for roof gardens, it shouldn't be too difficult. But in any case, you have to use lightweight materials.
But that's a matter of making the right choices. You can even use quite traditional ones, such as wood, for the planting areas.
Yes, that's what I thought. It'll look good, and it isn't too heavy.
But for the basic construction, the issue you have to address first is the material used between the building and the garden.
You mean the barrier fabric, which ensures there's no chance of rainwater leaking down into the building?
Yes. Nowadays that is very good and quite easily sourced.
Then, on the other hand, there's the business of water within the roof garden itself.
You mean drainage? That's an important feature of the construction in any roof design.
Yes, but I think most drainage issues have been well understood for quite a long time.
Okay. But another thing is with plants in an exposed situation, you usually need to find ways to optimize rainfall.
Yes, because rainwater is best for the garden, if you can store it for when it's needed. What I've been looking at are some buildings which use fairly conventional storage tanks, the kind that have been in use for decades, but have them linked to modern automatic watering systems.
Sounds complicated.
It's less so in practice than it sounds, I think. I've been researching them, and actually the latest ones definitely work very well, and they can be electronically regulated to suit the local microclimate.
That sounds interesting. You seem to have been doing some thorough research. Make sure you reference all your sources when you write it up.
Yes, sure. There's one more aspect I'd just like to run past you if there's time. I want to include a light feature in the design.
Of course.
I've got a sketch here.
Let's have a look then.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Well, I was really impressed by something I saw on a roof in Cornwall, and I'd like to design something similar. You have an area of planting, and I'm thinking of installing this lighting in an area filled with low-growing evergreen shrubs.
You'd have to have lights and things well away from anywhere children might be. But I can see this could be very effective, if a bit complicated. How would it work? On this drawing, this is a section view. You have this low wall on the right.
Yes, that's it. This is just one element, and these areas would be repeated all round the planted area. I think this will probably be a wooden wall using reclaimed timbers with an angled ceramic top surface.
Perhaps even ridge tiles, like they use on roofs?
Ah, yes. That'd be just the sort of thing. And that'd make it weatherproof. And then the heavy-duty electric wiring comes up through the floor just outside the planted area and into the wall. Then it's brought through to a projector low in the side of the wall, and that sends a beam of light along the fibre optic cable.
So there's no electricity in the actual lights. The fibre optic goes across the surface of the soil in the planting area.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. The shrubs will soon grow to cover it up, of course. And then the cable goes past a wooden post, which is between the shrubs and can be a support for them as they grow bigger, and then runs up into each element of the installation.
So the light beam is carried up to the top of each element and illuminates a kind of conical glass cap? I see. Is that the bit which would glow in the dark?
Yes.
And what's the cap supported on? Is it a wall?
No, it's a slender acrylic rod, like the stem of a flower or mushroom, which the cable runs up inside of.
Well, I'll be interested to see the final drawings.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to putting it all together.
That is the end of part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to part 3.
Now turns to Part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a talk given by a lecturer in the Art History department. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
In this lecture today, I'm going to introduce you to an American painter, Charles Willson Peale. You may be familiar with his portraits, but did you know that he never even saw a painting till he was a grown man? He was born in Maryland in 1741. His father died when he was 9, and the family struggled financially for the next few years, and Charles became a saddle maker's apprentice. One day, he went to Norfolk for supplies, and there he saw paintings for the first time. He thought they were so bad that he felt sure he could do better, so he decided to make painting his career. In 1766, he went to London to study painting with Benjamin West. Whilst there, he painted this portrait in 1768. See Slide 1, Pitt as a Roman senator. Notice how elaborately symbolical this portrait is. The symbolism arises, of course, from Pitt's famous speech to the British Parliament, where he draws an analogy between the ancient Roman Senate's view of a barbaric Britain and the prevailing European view of the time of a barbaric African continent fueling the slavery trade. Perhaps you didn't know that the Romans used Britons as slaves. But I digress. Back to Peale. He returned to America and in 1772 painted the first ever portrait of George Washington. See Slide 2. In 1773, he painted a group portrait of himself, his wife, mother, brothers, sister, his old nurse, and an unidentified baby. Just look at the slide. This painting is simply called the Peale family. And you can almost feel the exuberance of the family and their warmth towards one another. He enjoyed great success as a portraitist prior to the Revolution, and served with distinction in the Revolution. During this time, he became friends with George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson. After the war, he continued to paint, and, when his wife died in the 1790s, as a result of her 11th pregnancy, he remarried. He had 17 children in all, naming the sons after famous painters or scientists. Although perhaps best known for his portraits of famous people, Peale liked novelty. Look at this slide of his two sons, Raphael and Titian, life-size, climbing a narrow stairway. This painting, The Staircase Group, 1795, was exhibited in a doorway as a trompe-l'oeil. And it is said that it did, in fact, fool the eye of George Washington. Even as far back as 1772, we can see his desire for difference in Rachel weeping. It's a rather macabre portrait of his first wife crying over the death of one of their children, their daughter Margaret. I'd like to show you one more slide to demonstrate his innovative approach. This is a portrait of his brother, James, sitting at his desk at night, with only his face illuminated by a lamp. This was painted much later than the others, in 1822. You know, Peale believed anyone could learn to paint, and he taught painting to his brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, nephews, nieces, and other relatives. 4 of his sons, Titian, Rubens, Rembrandt, and Raphael, became painters, as did his brother James. Before I finish, I'd like to tell you a bit more about Peale. He was active in politics for several years, and throughout his life, he maintained a lively interest in many branches of science. He was also an inventor who gained patents for a fireplace, porcelain false teeth, and a new kind of wooden bridge. He collaborated with Thomas Jefferson on what was known as the polygraph, a kind of portable writing desk. But it wasn't any ordinary desk. This one could make several copies of a manuscript at once. He also wrote papers on a wide variety of subjects, from hygiene to engineering. Oh, and he also tried his hand at inventing a fairly primitive but innovative motion picture technique, new types of eyeglasses, and a velocipede, which is a precursor to the bicycle. Now, some of the original velocipedes had pedals and some didn't. You sort of scooted along on them using your feet. Unfortunately, I can't remember which type it was that Peel worked on. He's also remembered for his work as a naturalist. He established the first scientific museum in America, and he even invented his own system of taxidermy. For those of you who aren't sure what taxidermy is, it's the art of preparing, stuffing, and presenting dead animals so that they appear lifelike. He was also well ahead of his time in that he placed his animals in a simulated natural environment. His most magnificent exhibit, however, was the complete skeleton of an extinct mammal known as a mastodon, which he helped excavate. The event was memorialized in his extraordinary painting, The Exhuming of the Mastodon.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.